I guess you were out there on the front lines doing delivery.
For the first 2 years, pretty much every day. I mean, most of us didn't have a background in logistics or in delivery. And so to us, understanding all of the details and by doing every activity, whether it was deliveries, creating menus, performing customer support, everything in between, that was, how we got to really understand, the guts of this operation.
So I'm sitting here with Tony Xu from DoorDash. I'm excited to chat. You guys have just made a bunch of big announcements. So thanks for having me and ready to chat.
Yeah, thanks for coming up from sunny LA to doom and gloom San Francisco.
Yeah, actually, I don't know for sure, but do you say your last name Tony Xu?
Xu, like the shoe you wear. To try to keep it easy. The shoe you wear.
Tony Xu from DoorDash. All right.
Appreciate your asking, though.
Yeah. You guys just celebrated your 10-year, I guess, what do you call it? A milestone announcement?
We called it a Dashiversary internally. But yeah, it's our birthday. We launched on June 21st of 2013. And so last week we celebrated 10 years.
Awesome. And for those Dashers who, maybe weren't around 10 years ago, what was it like 10 years ago? Why'd you start the company? And, what did they miss 10 years ago?
Well, 10 years ago is certainly pretty different from where it is today. My co-founders and I literally worked out of our apartment that we made shift into an office. So 700 square foot place, 2 bedrooms kind of. And it was really just all of the founders, all 4 of us doing deliveries. And that's really, how it all started. I mean, the real reason wasn't even to build a business in delivery. It was to build a business to help local merchants, people like my mom who pretty much has ran a local business, for over 30 years. I worked at a Chinese restaurant that she used to work at, growing up, and I've had fond memories there, and we were trying to help people like her to turn all of their businesses into digital businesses. But, it was just a few of us. And so the first idea we kind of wanted to work on that we had heard loud and clear from a lot of merchants, people who sold food, retail, was that they couldn't fulfill deliveries, which to us made no sense given that it was 2013. And so we got into it.
Yeah. That's cool. I mean, I think I've heard the founding story before, but you're just sort of reiterating. I mean, I guess you were out there on the front lines doing delivery.
For the first 2 years, pretty much every day. Yeah, first 2 years, almost every day, all of the founders. I mean, actually, in almost the entire company, did this. I mean, most of us didn't have a background in logistics or in delivery, and so to us, understanding all of the details and by doing every activity, whether it was deliveries, creating menus, performing customer support, everything in between, that was, how we got to really understand, the guts of this operation.
Yeah. Well, and I think, we're going to kind of weave in and out of that, based off the announcements today. But I think it is cool to talk about, for Dashers to hear, your experience as an early, Dasher.
Early Dasher.
I don't know, were you calling them Dashers back then?
We were. We didn't have a Dasher app, though, when we started. And so it was actually a very janky way of how we used to do dispatching. But today, so I've gotten to see the different evolutions of the product.
Very cool. Well, let's talk about the product. So, I've got my notes here so I don't totally botch your announcement that you made today. But you guys made some updates to the Dasher experience, which we're going to focus on. Earn by time, which is going to offer Dashers a guaranteed minimum hourly rate for active delivery time. Some updates, to earn per offer. Post-checkout tipping, which I think is pretty cool, which, basically is going to allow customers to add or increase Dasher tips up to 30 days. Dash along the way, which I think is actually a really cool feature that, if you're going somewhere, you can kind of get DoorDash orders along the way.
Kill the downtime.
And then finally, Safe Dash location sharing, which, as the name implies, sort of helps you share your location. And, I just wanted to kind of, we'll kind of go through each of them at some point, I'm sure, in this interview today, but just lay those out at the start. And which one, I'm not going to make you pick a favorite, but which one kind of when you saw that feature or when you sort of saw the team working on it, or maybe one or two of them were your ideas, which resonated with you the most and why?
Well, they all resonated, but I think, and each one of them has a history of their own, and that's usually how these products work. I mean, we, start by doing the activities ourselves, and we have a program actually at DoorDash called WeDash, where every month, and every quarter and every year, everyone in the company, including myself, performs deliveries. I mean, we had something like 99.9% of everyone last year in 2022 did deliveries at DoorDash, and so it kind of starts there, and we kind of make hypotheses. I mean, we obviously report the bugs and things like that, but we start creating hypotheses around what are the areas of problems that we should be tackling. We actually vet some of that with a Dasher Community Council that we launched 4 years ago in 2019, where, we have a group of Dashers in the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand that pretty much, apply for this role and really are stewards of the community. And we kind of get their take on, hey, are these the biggest problems to work on? And then we go to work. And, in some of the announcements that you talked about, all of them are important in their own right. This earn by time, feature has been something that we've been thinking about for a few years now. And it's because, one of the hardest challenges about a platform like the DoorDash platform is we have people who come from very different needs. We've had over 13 million Dashers in our lifetime who've generated or earned over $35 billion, since inception. But 90% of them dash fewer than 10 hours a week. And, the average is, even less than 4 hours a week. And so you have a small portion of Dashers that sometimes, see this as more of a full-time opportunity. But the vast majority kind of come for sometimes 30 minutes a dash, sometimes up to 10 hours a week. And so it is tough to solve for every single particular use case. But one of the things we've heard is that there's kind of two modes, one of which is Dashers kind of feel like they understand how our platform works. They like the idea of assessing which orders are better for them versus which orders are not as good for them. And so they like to earn, by each offer. And especially now that we're getting into grocery deliveries and in-store shopping and package returns and all different types of tasks, even beyond restaurant delivery, they like that choice. On the other side, some people get overwhelmed by that choice and they dislike the kind of variance and sometimes it's a high paying offer, sometimes it's a lesser paying offer, sometimes there's a tip involved with the order, sometimes there isn't a tip. There's a lot of variables I have to keep in track. Can you just actually, simplify it for me and give me the consistency of earnings that I expect for the limited time that I do this? And that earn by time feature that we just announced, that's where it comes from. But it came from years of hearing this feedback and trying to actually, get to, frankly, a certain scale of business where we can actually reliably and predictably offer that and then actually ship it in a very responsible way.
So you guys were, I think, really the first company, and I think it's pretty innovative to launch this, sort of earn by time offering, now available as an option really to Dashers everywhere. Do you think that there is a specific type of Dasher or type of person maybe that this is right for? I'm thinking in my mind, like new drivers, new Dashers, hey, you just kind of want to learn more about the system, how it works. Maybe you're not as concerned with maximizing your earnings. Is there another kind of profile that you had in mind, or who's this kind of product, the best fit for when you were designing it?
Yeah, I mean, when we first started, it was actually exactly what I think our early hypothesis was kind of very similar to, the setup of the question, which was for Dashers who are maybe less experienced, right? Whether they're new Dashers or just Dashers who are infrequent and don't come onto the platform a lot, but when they do come on, they do expect to see the reliability and the consistency of those earnings. That was kind of the first take. As we started talking to more and more Dashers, however, there are Dashers because they come in and out of my platform. It's not like they come in and then they leave, they never come back. There are Dashers who've been with us for years who actually gave us feedback that said, actually that's not so bad. Because I think one of the things we've learned, kind of the through line through 10 years of doing this and, having seen over 13 million Dashers, both the stories as well as the data, what it would suggest is that everyone is looking for some goal. They're coming to the platform for some goal. The goal could be to save money for a project, school. It could be to buy a particular discretionary activity, go on a trip. It could be to get a gift. It could be to, any near-term needs for housing or other types of activities. And as a result, it wasn't just new Dashers or lesser experienced Dashers who wanted the reliability or the consistency of the earnings. It was actually there's a large contingency. And the way we thought about it was when we are now responsible for so many Dashers, as well as, we recognize we're not maybe the main thing for them, but that the fact that we can be a place for them to reduce their financial stress and burden, we have to offer the maximal choice. And that means for certain Dashers who love, doing the analysis and figuring out every single order, that's awesome. We got to keep that for others who maybe don't have the time or maybe don't have the desire to do that. we do need a solution.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's what we've seen in the Dasher community with the sort of, I know you guys have been testing the earn by time, and a lot of Dashers are out there sort of thinking, all right, comparing earn by offer, earn by time, there's peak pay, right? There's a lot of factors that go into it. And I guess the nice thing, I guess to give you guys some credit, you guys are kind of putting your money where your mouth is and saying, hey, we have two options. We're not forcing anyone into either option. Because I think that's one thing that, sometimes it feels like, working in the gig economy, there can be strings attached.
Yes.
We're going to give you this, but we're going to take this, or we're going to lower this. So in your mind, is there any downside? What expectations should Dashers have here with the earn by time? Is there what's not great about it?
Well, in fact, we've been thinking about this idea for years now. And it's the implementation detail that matters, because one of our design principles was that, the earnings have to be roughly the same. Yeah. So that no Dasher is advantaged or disadvantaged depending on which choice they
got. It. So is that the goal?
That is totally about the same, in either mode. But that takes iteration, and especially as we're introducing more modes of dashing, whether it's grocery shopping, retail delivery, package returns, etc. And as a result of that, it took us some time and iterating and trialing before actually rolling it out. Yeah. And so, and also, back to the previous question around, who's this for, whether it's for, lesser experienced Dashers or newer Dashers, it also took us time to learn that actually it was for a lot of people. Yeah. It wasn't something we should just target one segment. Mm-hmm. And as a result, we took our time to make sure that we can roll out responsibly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that, we've seen and heard from Dashers when it comes to earn by time, I guess if I was going to point out a complaint, it might be, right, that it's for active time, right, from the time that you accept an order to the time that you go. So if you're sitting there, not busy, never getting an order, you're not necessarily being paid for that. So talk a little bit about that, because I know that might come with some strings attached, right, if DoorDash had to pay for that time too.
Yeah, so our goal is always to keep people busy when they want to be busy. Right. Obviously, there's times that people don't want to do certain orders or don't want to deliver in certain areas, and we obviously offer the choice to reject those orders. And for us, it's our job is to minimize, any wasted effort, maximize the efficiency, for the entire system. Right. DoorDash only works if it works for every single participant, and I'm not just talking about Dashers now. I'm talking about consumers. I'm talking about merchants. And so we run this pretty complicated system where on every single order, literally, we have at least 3 people involved, right? There's a consumer who has to place an order, a merchant who's obviously preparing the order, and then obviously a Dasher who's doing the fulfillment. And so that's the orchestration. And the goal is to make sure that there's zero wasted time.
Yeah. Got it. I think I definitely like that sort of utilization component, right? Keeping Dashers busy. And, you talked to, some of the numbers I think you guys have shared around this announcement were pretty interesting. 13 million Dashers. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the ebbs and flows of, the Dashers out there? And right now, one of the complaints we've heard from Dashers that, maybe sometimes there's like an oversupply of Dashers, right? Because, I think there's maybe an inherent tension, right? As a Dasher, I kind of want to be paid as much as possible on an individual order, the biggest tip as possible. But, over time, if customers have to pay a lot, right, that's going to cost them maybe less orders. So how do you kind of connect what I care about as an individual to, sort of the company's, bottom line, the company's overall, and, kind of keeping Dashers busy? Is there a metric you think about, or how do you think about it's one thing to say we should keep Dashers busy, but is there a number, or you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's what's so fun and challenging about running a platform where our goal is to make it work for every audience. Yes. Dashers, merchants, and consumers. And so I wish it could be sometimes just one metric. Honestly, it'd be a much easier business to run, to be candid with you. But we have to watch all of the component parts, right? And I totally hear you loud and clear. I've been a part of dashing myself where, I was sitting there and there were no orders, right? That means we got it wrong on the supply and demand matching. And that means we got to do better in that particular area, in that particular time, in that particular neighborhood, in that particular merchant area, right? Or we got the wait times wrong, for a particular, restaurant or a particular shopping experience where it took a lot longer than was expected, or that an item wasn't even available, right? And there's a very difficult kind of substitution experience required for both the Dasher as well as the consumer. And so these are all the things we have to take care of. I wish it were just one metric. I sincerely do sometimes, but that's not good enough. right? If we want to build a business where we can make all of the local businesses successful, bring them incremental sales, and empower them by giving them tools to build their own digital products and give work opportunities and make it convenient for consumers and affordable for consumers where we can build it sustainably over a long period of time, it can't just be one metric.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the WeDash program you mentioned.
Sure.
I think you said 99.9%.
Last year, 2022, that was the metric.
I'm guessing that's what, thousands or tens of thousands of...
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Of DoorDash employees out there doing deliveries. I mean, I really believe it's important to, sincerely, understand what we're doing.
Yeah, well, I kind of really like that because, a few of the comments you made, it sort of made me think like you've been out there dashing, right? Certain restaurants maybe, want to avoid, not going to name any names, right? Certain restaurants are a little slower, certain types of orders, certain ones where you maybe have to do shopping, or compared to just a pickup and drop off. So.
But even on that one, Harry, though, but it's not even about the avoidance of those restaurants, right? It's about better understanding the why and how to deal with it, right? It's almost like if you think about how a city works, that's the way I think about how our business works. We have to be a digital representation of everything that happens physically. And sometimes in software, we like to just talk about writing beautiful software that just does, the job, and we, forget about the edge cases or just take a small amount of customization on the edge cases. In the physical world, everything is an edge case. So you can't just say, oh, there's that restaurant that takes forever, or that store that has stockouts all the time, and therefore we should just ignore them. Well, they're part of our communities, right? They represent the personalities. Maybe that restaurant that has a long wait time is just really popular.
Yeah.
Or you know what? Maybe they just had a bad day and 2 staff members decided not to show up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that they're not a part of the community.
I guess that's sort of the challenge, right? Because as a dasher, you do kind of think about like, if I have to wait, that's kind of why I like the earn by time, because now if I'm waiting extra,
totally, you don't have to think about it.
I don't have to think about that, right? In the past, sometimes we hear this complaint from gig workers, right? It's like, oh, it'd be so nice if I could just go out, deliver, no need to worry about all these things. But really, like my whole business is kind of about like, let's figure out which restaurants to avoid, right? Because if you avoid those, you will literally make more money, right? By, avoiding certain
Yeah, and that means we didn't build a good enough product, right? Yeah. If we built a product where it feels like some participant should feel like they must avoid another participant, right? Remember, it takes 3 to tango here, right? Consumers, merchants, and dashers, and we are all part of the same orchestration on the same order. We're all part of the same team, right? And so if we built a product as a platform where one of those participants, has some negative incentive with another, we have to solve for that. We can't just say, oh, you know what, that's an edge case.
I think one thing a lot of dashers forget too is that this is a 3-sided marketplace. I mean, so if you were, if you had a dasher, if you had lots of dashers that you were talking to, for example, and you could kind of, what do you think dashers don't understand about either customers or merchants, right? Because I think it's easy, they're kind of, it's almost like behind the scene, you know what I mean? You go, you pick up, you drop off, since the pandemic, you don't even see your customer's face anymore, right? I mean, that's good and bad, right? It's not as personal, right? So what would you tell dashers like, hey, what do you not think about? What should you know or consider about the merchants or the customers?
What I would tell dashers, or frankly, merchants or even consumers, is that it does take 3 audiences to make one order successful every single time, right? And we as a platform have to solve for all of us and to make sure that, sustainably we can keep growing the GDPs of these cities, which is great for jobs, which is great for earnings, which is great for sales for local businesses, and it's great for consumers. And so we have to think about all of those parts. But I totally get it. Look, it's out of sight, out of mind, right? And I've been on deliveries where, oh my gosh, why did the app take me to somewhere so far? Or why did I have to wait 20 minutes in line? I've been a part of those really tough dashes, and that's a problem. We got to go fix, right? We're going to go fix it, right? And this idea of incrementally solving each one of these edge cases to smoothing them, that's, really what it took, candidly, to get a product like Earn by Time even shipped. That's why we couldn't just ship it in, a month or 2. I mean, it took literally years of, working every one of these edge cases where it got polished enough where we felt like we could roll it out.
Got it. So what are some of the other, I guess, things you've discovered while dashing either from you or, maybe the team that have, now been implemented in this product rollout?
There's a Slack channel devoted to all of the dashes by anyone in the company. And I mean, it is just hit after hit after hit of app bugs around, just how difficult the app is, sometimes to use. We have to do a better job there, so we're working on that. Challenges with, is some of the things we've actually kind of discussed, whether it's getting the wait times wrong, getting the order to supply ratios off, the sitting around waiting for no orders problem that you talked about, or just realizing, hey, why are we dashing from a particular store that seems to be either closed or super busy when there's another store that's literally selling the exact same things that's actually open and available. I mean, there's literally all sorts of things that I know. I don't think there's a single dash, and I've done almost 1,000, where I haven't learned something new. And again, because if you think about what DoorDash, the ultimate problem that we're solving, we're trying to build a digital catalog for the physical world. So we're always going to find challenges, right? And we're not criticizing the store that's taking longer or the store that has a stock out. We're trying to help them. We're trying to understand, like, okay, maybe we predicted incorrectly, something about your store. If we did a better job doing that, then the dasher maybe would not have waited, or that, the inventory would have been there.
Yeah. What do you think is the number one challenge that dashers face out on the road today?
I always think, challenges for dashers are whenever there is a mismatch in expectations. Gotcha. And that's why it's hard to just say, oh, there's a challenge for the new dasher, which is the exact same challenge for the, super experienced dasher, right? That's not usually the same, right? There's some commonalities. I talked about app stability, app usage. Yeah, sure. Those are common. Nobody likes to wait, forever. I think we talked about some of the top pain points, but I don't think that's actually good enough in terms of understanding dashers, because, dashers at the end, I mean, sometimes we just, sit back after a while of, running this business and just look at the numbers. Dashers are people, right? The dashers they're teachers, they're parents, they are entrepreneurs, right? They're people who ended up founding their own, media companies like yourself. And I think it's not good enough, candidly, to just say, oh, well, you know what? If we just solve these top 5 pain points, we're done. Yeah. That's not good enough. We actually have to understand, did we help you solve your goal?
Yeah.
And if your goal was to achieve X and we didn't do it in whatever X was, by the way, it's not always a money thing. Well, then we have to go do that. Yeah. And so that's how I think about our relationship with dashers.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've surveyed, thousands of drivers every year for almost 10 years, not quite as long as you guys have been, 9 years, and, talked to thousands of drivers. And I feel like the two themes that come up over and over, earnings and flexibility. I mean, earnings, I think everyone wants to make more money, right? Not necessarily just gig workers, people in every job, every industry. Yeah. And then flexibility. I think the announcement that you guys have made today really does a lot to address the flexibility. And I mean, I guess on the earnings component, like, how do you think about earnings in terms of dashers? I think we've seen, the earn by time, pilot, for example, we've seen 10, 12, 16, plus peak pay per hour, right? We've seen, differing amounts, and obviously, certain cities, you're going to pay a little bit more than others. But I guess in your mind, like, what, how do you think about, like, is there a number you think dashers should earn, or, how busy they should stay? Like, how do you think about how much they should be paid?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I'm always looking at is, first to your point, are the numbers actually fair to the job that's actually being asked, right? Because DoorDash today is not like the DoorDash of 10 years ago, where we were just restaurant deliveries. Yeah. Some deliveries now are just structurally going to take longer. When you're shopping for a basket of 25 grocery items, that is going to take longer than going and getting up a pickup order from, a fast food restaurant, right? And so the first thing is, we have to really make sure that it's fair to the task that is being asked, right? The second thing we look at is, the supply and demand component, such that we actually don't want to have an oversaturation, right? We do not allow an unlimited supply of dashers to get out on the road, and that's intentional to protect dasher, right? Dasher earnings, I'm happy to say, when we started the company, it was something closer to like 16 an hour nationwide. We're now closer to 24, 25 an hour nationwide, right? And so it's moving in the right direction, I believe. And but that's not good enough to look at just that average. We have to look one click lower, in my opinion, which is it right for the right task? And we don't always get those things right, right? Maybe we misestimate it, some time, or challenge, candidly, to get, a particular activity done. Well, we got to go redo that. We have to make it easier to do the tasks. That's the other thing we have to do. And then we have to increase the matching opportunities in our system as we get into other categories, other modes of transport beyond just, a car. And so we're working on all those things. I don't think we always get it right, but, you have my commitment and frankly, the team's commitment that, this is a core customer of ours. We do not view this as optimizing for just the consumer. We've always believed that. In fact, when we started the company, the very first product, the very, very, very first product for consumers, merchants, and Dashers that we built was the Dasher app. And it wasn't, we didn't even have an app for consumers. We had a website where there was 8 restaurants, and a phone number for you to call. That was how we started. But and it's because we believe at the end of the day that it starts with actually bringing people what it is that they want ordered. And obviously Dashers are a huge component of that and getting that right first.
Yeah. So I think, one thing I noticed about the product announcement today, especially on the consumer app, I was sort of loosely paying attention because I was waiting for the Dasher.
Yeah, no problem.
I said, wow, there's all these different categories that are launching. And I think that is important to Dashers, right? Because typically DoorDash has been, primarily food delivery. And I know over the past few years, you've done more on the convenience and grocery. And, it seems like now, what I see from the consumer side is all these different categories.
Yeah.
And so talk about what that means for Dashers, because I think most people think of DoorDash as food delivery and, should they expect to do, food delivery mixed with a little grocery or are these separate categories? How do you think about the experience for Dashers with all these different categories you guys are?
Yeah, we named the company DoorDash intentionally, knowing that
Nothing about food.
knowing that we were a technology company from day one that started in restaurant delivery with the goal of building last mile services for every category. And then over time, other types of services to help these local businesses grow. That was always the vision for the company.
Well, when I first did my orientation, when DoorDash used to do actual in-person orientations in Orange County, 9 years ago, when I signed up to drive for DoorDash, someone asked a question, do you have to take the food to the door? And the guy said, it's in the name, DoorDash. Yes, you have to take the food to the door.
I like that. But yeah, you're totally right though. We have 500,000 plus restaurants now, over 100,000 non-restaurants or grocery stores, convenience stores, retail stores that frankly more non-restaurant stores than any other platform in North America. So we are giving Dashers that choice and some Dashers just love doing groceries. Some Dashers love certain retail stores. And some Dashers prefer the restaurants. And I think giving Dashers more choice, bringing more matching opportunities into the system is ultimately going to create more earnings as well as more flexible opportunities. And it'll give us, opportunities to also simplify and build something like Earn by Time.
Yeah. I think that what we've seen, across rideshare and food delivery and grocery delivery, that they're you're getting something from A to B, but a lot of the in-between is quite different. Dealing with a passenger is pretty different than food delivery. And, I think even grocery delivery is pretty different. So I'm kind of like, I always tell people that, I think like they're almost like mutually exclusive. There's if you do food delivery, you might try a little grocery delivery, but I don't think it's too many people love food delivery and then they'll do a grocery delivery here and there. What do you think about that?
There's a lot of self-selection. I think you're totally right. I remember when we started the company 10 years ago, we ran a very simple, very, very simple, non-statistically significant. I'm a math major, so I kind of have to, be careful with what I say here. But experiment where we had 20 DoorDash drivers and 20 UberX drivers. I remember, and both groups were making about $20 an hour. This was in Palo Alto in 2013, and I remember making a simple offer, for $25 an hour to see if the DoorDash drivers would drive Uber X at the time, and if the Uber drivers would drive DoorDash, because just to see, to your point, like how much of it was self-selection, how much of it was, an overlap, and only one driver out of the 40 said yes to switching. And I think honestly the answer was pretty obvious in my face, literal in my face if I actually looked at it, because the two groups of people were totally different. Over 50% of the Dashers are female. A tiny percentage of ride-sharing drivers are female. The average age of Dashers was much younger, 10 to 20 years younger than the average age of rideshare. The vehicles required are different. Obviously, you can use bikes and scooters a lot more in delivery versus in passenger delivery. And so that self-selection that you're talking about, we see in categories too, to your point. As I mentioned, some Dashers just love a particular grocery store. It's not even grocery. I love this particular store.
Yeah.
I love Safeway. I prefer Aldi. I love Sprouts.
They might know it really
yeah,
well,
exactly.
too.
They know exactly, right? And I think back to this idea of DoorDash as a representation for the city, you see this all the time. People know their cities, right?
Yep.
It's a very local business. It's at the neighborhood level, and they're helping themselves by earning, but they're also helping their cities.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, I think the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about was Dasher loyalty. And I have to say, you guys kind of got me with this one, because I saw as part of the announcement, there was a $10,000 award for Dashers. I wanted to ask you about, what you guys were doing for the most loyal Dashers, and you sort of answered that question, huh? But I'll still let you talk about the award, because I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So we're super excited about this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, earlier, today actually, we gave Dashers who were with DoorDash since the very beginning. Between 2013 and 2016. So before 2016, and Dashers who've completed over 10,000 lifetime deliveries, $10,000 each.
Yeah.
And it's just a small gesture, candidly, to those who've been with us since the very early days, right? And we've had a history of this. I mean, when we used to start the company, I told you, the entire company did dashing. We, had literally lounges in our apartment, which was our office, for Dashers. So we literally shared a couch with Dashers, right? To the earliest, customer support team members were all former Dashers.
Yeah.
To the first proceeds of our IPO, we're basically writing bonuses to Dashers. And I think, again, giving back to the audiences that, have helped us co-create DoorDash, it's been our North Star. It will continue to be North Star. I'm super, privileged that we were able to, do this for Dashers. But, the real, heroes are the people who actually do the work, the Dashers, the merchants.
Well, I think the reason why, that question is so important to me, because I feel like it's really missing in the gig economy. In a normal organization, if you're with a company for years at a time, you're high rated, you've done thousands of trips, which would, kind of equate, right? You'd be treated well. Maybe you would get priority support, or, like I know you guys have some programs around Top Dasher and things like that. But I feel like that's kind of missing at times. And, it's like you said something earlier too, like you guys have millions of Dashers now, and I'm sure it's easy to look at them as a number on a spreadsheet, but, a lot of these guys and gals are, busting their butt, working hard, and, like some often going, the extra mile. And so I think it's kind of cool to reward them for that loyalty. Is there anything else, on the horizon? Obviously, this was sort of, like you said, it's kind of I don't know if you'd call it symbolic, but, it's for a small group of drivers that have other 10,000. What other items are you looking for? Maybe the driver who has 9,000 deliveries and a, great rating and has been with the company for 4 or 5 years. How are you thinking about, what should they think about, when it comes to, does DoorDash really value, the work that I'm doing for them?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think you're spot on that. The most important thing in your setup of the question is that we can't just look at people like a number, right? And I think that, and especially the bigger a platform gets, the greater sometimes the tendency to do it that way, and that's why I think it's so important that we at DoorDash do dashing ourselves and actually talk to Dashers and have the community council. To really understand the stories of people. And one of the things you said was kind of, there are Dashers, right, for whom, and maybe it's not the majority, because the majority really view this as a part-time opportunity, but there are Dashers who have done lots of deliveries and view this as more full-time. And for those Dashers, whether it's the Top Dasher program as well as more rewards that we're thinking about, those are the things that we continue to make sure it's a top priority in our roadmap, to make sure that it's not just thinking about the big averages. Because if you looked at the big numbers, I just told you 90% of Dashers do fewer than 10 hours a week, right? But it's also to not forget the 10% or the 1% or the 0.01%, for whom this might actually be, everything for them.
They might be a small number.
Yeah, it might be small, but to them, this is everything. This is everything, right? And so my point is that I don't have more news to share at the moment, but we are looking at how can we build also individualized kinds of programs, not just we obviously have to do the mass programs because we're talking about 13 million Dashers, so it's not, right? So we do have to be able to move the needle and be able to solve the problem across tens of thousands of cities, but we also have to solve at the individual level.
Well, I won't pin you down and make you make any predictions or, expectations right now, but if you had to look to a few areas that, Dashers really cared about, whether it was earnings, flexibility, I don't know, customer support, issues with deactivation, right? Those are probably top four or five things that Dashers care about. What are some of the areas that you think that you'll be focusing on next? I mean, obviously, no, you can't do everything, but what's next on the road?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head on a lot of them, right? In terms of what Dashers talk about, earnings obviously it is top. Second is flexibility, whether it's making sure that they can get onto the schedule or get effectively to skip the line, so to speak, to be able to get on the road and dash, right? We talked about this oversaturation problem earlier. Things around potentially even other products for them that help them solve their goals that may not be related to dashing.
Got it.
And so the way I think about it is we got to make the main thing, which is we got to make dashing easier.
Yeah.
We got to make it. We have to hit the expectation every time, because again, I believe that whenever there's a frustration, it's usually some mismatch in expectation. We also have to again, just I think not just look at the statistics and the numbers, and I think that this is where I think a lot of times it's harder to see for a company like DoorDash, but a lot of the behind the scenes work is in individualized customer support. And I'm not even talking about the most extreme cases, whether it's trust and safety. I'm just talking about a Dasher who needs help with a particular issue, and that we literally will actually do our best to go all the way into solving that issue, right? And so I think it's all the things that you talked about. It's the details that matter, and it's making sure that we're not just thinking about the system, but we're also thinking about the individual.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I appreciate you taking the time today. I know Dashers are going to be excited to try the Earn by Time. We didn't really get to cover the Dash along the way, but I'm sure they'll be excited to try some of these other
or getting
products
the opportunity to get tipped post checkout. I think that's going to be huge. I mean, tipping.
Anything you want to say about that? I know about the tip.
Well, I think tips is this like fascinating study really in consumer behavior, and it's really a very U.S. phenomenon. In other countries, tipping is a lot less prevalent, and in the U.S., first, the vast majority of people do tip, but there are people who don't, right? And so we're trying to make it easier for folks to encourage consumers to be able to recognize the hard work that Dashers are doing, whether that's before the checkout, after the checkout.
Yeah.
The dash along the way is the same thing. It's to make sure that we're minimizing any downtime as they're getting from maybe where they are to the starting point of their preference. And then I know we don't talk enough about safety, but it's one of those things where you can get lost in the numbers. 99.99% of the time it's 100%. 99.99% of the time it's safe. There is no issue, but that 0.0000 percent of the time, that small fraction, that's a huge deal to somebody. Yeah. Right. So I know this is what I mean by not getting lost in the numbers. And, for those individuals where those things are happening, we need to be, we need to prevent those issues, and we're working on products that do that. But then, the announcement that we shipped today, where you can share your real-time location up to 5 contacts, we also have to solve it during, your dash as well.
Got it. Well, very cool. Appreciate you guys sharing everything today, and thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry.
All right.